G'day reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Welcome to Gallery Aquatica TV. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Mini Reef 120. This awesome little tank is probably the all-time best beginner's reef tank. We're going to have a close look at the tank and the components that come with it, and we're going to be showing you exactly what we would recommend to make this tank work for you. As you can see, the Mini Reef 120 comes in two boxes, the tank and the cabinet. So we're going to start by taking them out of the boxes and put the tank onto the cabinet, and then we'll show you all the different parts of the Mini Reef 120. So here we go. We've now got our Mini Reef out of the box. We've got it on our cabinet. We've pulled all of the equipment out, and that's so that we can put the equipment back in and show you each of the pieces as we do it. So we'll get started. First of all, we'll look at the plumbing. The plumbing for the Mini Reef is very basic, very easy to set up, and you really just have two lines to worry about. A drain from the tank into the sump, which is this one, and this just sits in place in the big hole, like so. This is going to be the drain underneath, so that will go from below, and you have a return line, and this is the return line. It sits in the smaller hole. We're not going to set this up properly. I'm just going to sit them in place just so that we get a feel for what it looks like. And the drain on the top, oops, sorry, the return line I should say. That's the return line for the bottom. Okay, this is what I was looking for. So the return line has got this little, it's like a duckbill flow generator, random flow generator, and it just attaches in like so, so that you have some directionality with your return. So the plumbing is very simple. We won't spend too much more time on this. You'll probably see in future episodes of us actually setting up the plumbing, but today we're just having a look at the equipment. So this is the plumbing. Let's have a look at the light. So the Aqua One, or the Mini Reef 120, comes with a Mariglow 2-foot light. This one here. So it's LED, it has two color diodes, a white and a blue, and there's two transformers. So you can actually have them on separate timers. So you can have a dawn and dusk period where you've just got the blue on. So the lighting system is relatively good. It's okay for fish and low light corals, but we're going to talk about two things on the Mini Reef that I would suggest upgrading, and the first is the light. Now, these tanks are an awesome value setup with everything you get, the cabinet, the tank, the pumps, etc. But I would suggest upgrading the light at some point. Now, you don't have to do this straight away. You can certainly wait until you've had your tank established, so what most people would call cycled, and maybe for the first few months of basic corals, you might keep this light. But if you want to have good success with your mini reef and corals, I would suggest upgrading this light. Now, one of the best mini reefs that I see on the regular is Anya's soft coral mini reef, and she has upgraded the lighting system on her mini reef to it's a Hydra 32, and it also has supplementary LEDs on it. All right, so we're going to put this in place to show you what it looks like. It's whilst it's not a light that's going to give you amazing coral growth, especially for stony corals, it is quite neat, looks quite good, and it will definitely give you an adequate amount of light in the short term. But that is our Mariglow. So let's have a look at the next part of the system, the return pump. So the return pump is the Moray 2300, and we haven't had a look in the cabinet yet, but we'll just have a quick look at the sump. Now it's a very, very basic sump. You really just have two baffles, and they're baffles all the way to the bottom. And the way that you configure your sump is definitely one of the things that you can really look at to improve the running of your mini reef. Now, as a great beginner's tank, as we've spoken about, you can just have it very basic, some biological media. You might put in some matting that stands up so that you've got some sort of mechanical filtration. But there are lots of different ways that you can set this up. And in fact, Anya's mini reef has got a big light, almost as big as the Mariglow underneath, and it has a huge amount of ketomorphic growth, and that makes a massive difference to the water chemistry of the tank. But anyway, our Aqua One Moray, so it is basically just a standard return pump. It's an AC, so it's not controllable, but that's okay. It sits on the right hand side, just in here, hard to see, it's a bit dark in there, and it feeds water up into the return and out of this nozzle here. Now, this pump is, in my opinion, more than adequate for this system. It gives you a good flow, they're a relatively reliable pump. Whilst you could upgrade this return pump to a DC, and you might upgrade it to like a Ecotech Vectra S2 or an Octovarios, I would suggest that this is something that I would leave on the system because it is definitely adequate for the tank, and not like the light. The light is definitely something I would upgrade, but I wouldn't upgrade the return pump. Let's look at the next thing, the protein skimmer. And this is the one thing that most people think about with these systems, and one of the most popular components to upgrade. So I guess I laugh when I talk about the protein skimmer that comes with these systems, the G216, because it is a much maligned skimmer, and I think a bit unfairly so. And the reason why I say that is because the problems that people typically have with this skimmer are actually very easy to correct. And I'll show you in a sec exactly what I mean by that. Okay. So this is our skimmer. I'll show you how it sits in the sump in a second, but it is a typical Venturi protein skimmer that is fed by a pump, which is in here, I guess. Okay. Which is fed by this pump like so. Now this sits in the sump. Let me just get this sorted. And like that. And this pump has got an intake with a Venturi, which is this little thing here. Now, the most common problem that people have with these protein skimmers relates to this little nozzle here. And it is an unfortunately small nozzle, and if that becomes clogged with calcium buildup, you will find that your skimmer will no longer be frothing full of bubbles, and it will not skim. So if you regularly clean out I use a little probe on my Leatherman, but you could use a needle or a pin or anything. If you regularly clean this out, you'll actually find that this protein skimmer will pull skim and probably do more than enough job for this size tank. So we'll put our protein skimmer in position. Now I did mention that this is something that people like to upgrade, and there are lots of really cool protein skimmers that you could upgrade to, but I wouldn't necessarily run out and replace this straight away. I would probably give it a bit of time before you worry about that. You know, run it for a year or two before you worry about upgrading it. I think you're much better off spending the money upgrading the light in the short term rather than the protein skimmer. All right, just put this all back in like so. We'll put this in here. Okay. And you can position it differently to this. We're not setting this tank up today, this is just a demonstration, but certainly sitting like that is how I would normally run the protein skimmer, and then have biological media in and around where it's sitting. Okay, let's look at the next thing. So we have a filter sock. Now this is something that I would probably upgrade in some way, although I don't necessarily have a set way that I would do it. The filter sock basically catches the water that drains down our drainage line. So this sits, I've got it upside down, this sits on the side of the sump, like so. The drain goes in here and it collects the waste. I would possibly look at upgrading to a system that allows you to not have to take the drainage line off to clean the sock. I haven't ever put a filter roller on a mini reef. I don't think that there's enough space, but certainly this is one of the weak points of the system, and it does require a fair bit of cleaning, and it's something that I would consider upgrading. The next thing we'll look at is the heater. Now, you get a 200 watt heater for this tank. In Queensland where we live, we normally look at about 1 watt per litre. Colder climates probably need a little bit more, but this 200 watt heater is more than enough. I typically only run the heaters in the winter. You can sit the heater in the overflow or in the sump, or even in the tank itself. But certainly the heater is a part of the tank that I wouldn't worry about upgrading. These are more than adequate for the system. So I just mentioned with the light, there is a couple of different ways that you can mount the light. It does come with an option where you've got a gooseneck that hangs up over the back and allows you to suspend the light, which means you don't need to use these little legs. And the reason why that's important is because this tank does actually come with a glass cover. Now, typically I would recommend taking the glass cover off and possibly using a mesh net cover. The glass will impede the light, and you are better off with a nice mesh cover, or even leaving it open top, although of course fish jumping out is the risk. Other things that I would look at adding to this tank as your reef develops would be wave makers. And this tank is absolutely perfectly suited to the Neros, so the AI Nero, and there's two sizes, the 3 or the 5. You could go either one. A single Nero 5 would be adequate for this tank by itself in most reefs, or you could put a couple of the 2s and have that option for versatility of positions, and really create some cool water flow structures. The other things that we spoke about already, you know, upgrading the light and the protein skimmer, that's definitely something that you can do. But the idea for me of these tanks, and the reason why they are so good, is because you get everything that you really require from the start, apart from a few little things. You know, you'd probably want to buy a bag of sand and some rock and maybe some supplements, but really they come with all the equipment. They're very reasonably priced. They're excellent little systems, and even for people that have been reefing for a long time, these are handy little tanks. You know, if you do upgrade to a bigger tank in the future, you may choose to use this as an anemone tank or a seahorse tank or a quarantine tank, because they've got a good sump system, a good overflow, and they're a nice size. They really are probably the most versatile tank on the market. So that's it for our deep dive into the Mini Reef 120. I think you can see exactly why they are a deservedly popular little tank, and fair to say the #1 all-time seller for the beginner reefer. When you consider their price, their value, their size, their ease of maintenance, and most importantly, the fact that they are so perfect for upgrading the componentry, they really do make for an awesome little reef tank. So that's it for today's episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. We'll bring you more tanks and more deep dives in the future. I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing. That's it for this week's episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. Don't forget to like and comment on all our videos and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned to Gallery Aquatica TV for more exciting episodes to come. I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing!